All right, CNT120, Chapter 2. We're now in the section on monitoring and into some documentation. So once my network, closets and things are set up, there's usually a layer of monitoring that's done. And this could be monitoring for security. It could also be monitoring for environment. And there is a number of products out there. I think I have a picture here showing there's all kinds of sensors that can be installed that will help you monitor when conditions in the room are not ideal, if you will. It's too hot. There's too much moisture. The power has turned out. There's not enough airflow. There's those sorts of things. There's all kinds of products out there to help monitor that and alert you. Here's a temperature, humidity sensor, air intake, etc. And these can all be connected into your network or a separate network of equipment to alert you when things are out of a state that's required. Maybe it is too hot. Maybe the ventilation is not working. That would need to be also part of your data closets. And I might even have some security cameras installed as well, so that I can monitor who's coming and going in my closets. Network documentation. We mentioned earlier about having documentation, updating it. Well, let's go a little bit deeper. And this is actually something we're going to do in our Chapter 2 lab. So, having update documentation usually requires some kind of network diagrams. Here will be an example of a physical topology diagram. Here's a logical one. As you see, there's not a whole lot of difference, but this is showing physically what's involved. Logic is like, I don't really care whether it's wireless or wired. It's showing what is it connected to. Well, in my network documentation, I'm typically going to have some kind of map, some kind of diagram to show how things are, and then I might overlay all kinds of information on top. It might be an IP addressing scheme, might be VLANs, might be subnets, might be closet locations, etc. There might be a bunch of information I'm laying on top of this to document how is my network set up and running. Well, this network diagram is often the product of network mapping, and there is actually programs out there to help with network mapping. There's a bunch of commercial products that can be bought. There's even some free products that can be used to help with mapping out what is there and what is it, and some information about it. The book mentions Nmap, Network Mapper. Here's an example of that. I threw their little logo here so you could recognize. This actually is a free program that you can use, and I can use this to map an element. Like in my network, I can use an IP to map to a router and get everything I need, map to a server, learn as much as I can. And this is all in the name of learning about your network, that I can use information to start documenting my network. And there's some features on here that allow you to find out if you have, if you're mapping a server, if you have certain ports open or certain ports that are open that shouldn't be open because of a software patch that was not applied properly or needs a software patch. My network diagrams are typically drawn with different applications. I'll show you a couple samples in a minute. But they'll typically use a set of icons that Cisco developed years ago that are fairly standard. These types of icons are commonly used literally around the world, and anybody in IT recognizes, oh, that's a switch, that's a router, that's a firewall, that's the internet. So there's common icons that get used in these diagrams to help communicate stuff about your network. Well, this is a program we used to use a number of years ago called Dia. This actually has all those icons in, and I can connect them up. Here's diagrams.net. This is one actually we're going to use as part of our lab this week. This is a free program we can use that has all these icons in to show connections of things. Here's EdDraw or DrawSoft that's out there. Here's SmartDraw. Here's Visio. A lot of people use Visio at their work, because a lot of us do not have Visio at home on our system, but where you work you would have Visio installed. A lot of programs try to emulate Visio because a lot of us have that installed at work, but those of us don't end up using these other programs like diagrams.net that are free to use. The network diagram gives you a broad snapshot of topology, physical, logical, things about my network, and I might use more than one diagram to show where things are physically located, but how logically they're connected. So this shows what is connected and where. This is showing logically things about IPs, subnets, that sort of stuff about my network. I might have a wiring diagram. This is going to show how things are physically connected up. I'm physically going to connect this port to this one, this port to this device, this port to this device, etc. Or I might do, as I showed earlier, logically, just showing the switch is connected to this, switch is connected to this, and I'm not really breaking out the ports. I might also have a rack diagram that shows how my equipment is installed in my equipment rack. This switch, this patch panel, and I might even put more details in here about model number, serial number, that sort of thing. Again, for documentation purposes. Here's a couple other rack diagrams showing servers and other things. Here's another rack diagram. So this might help with organizing even, how much equipment is going to fit in this rack. This shows you, 4U, 2U, 2U. This allows you to kind of spec out, is it all going to fit, or do I need to spread it into 2 racks? In my business, along with documentation, I might have operating procedures. Some places have standard operating procedures. And these are procedures on how I do certain things. Standard operating procedures might be how we actually document something, how we label something, how I perform a task like backing something up or installing a new version of something. There might be a standard procedure that everybody's going to use to do that task. That way things can hopefully be done logically or in a standard method that somebody else picking up where you left off will know how far you got. When I deal with my documentation, I also end up dealing with some inventory. When I'm dealing with equipment, there is a life cycle. I'll find out what I need, design it, worry about implementing it, documenting it, and then seeing in over 6 months, year, is it going, is it working, do I need to replace it, etc. And this goes for anything. For your desktops, this goes for your switches, this goes for your routers, your firewalls, servers, etc. There is a life cycle here that you would work around to periodically be updating these things. Along with this is inventory management. I need to document what I got. I need to document all my assets. I need to document all of my equipment, all my printers, all my desktops, all my routers, switches, servers, etc. Don't be surprised when you're the new guy that you get a spreadsheet and you go around and verify stuff or add extra information to it that is not already on there. Okay, that's part of it. I need to document everything. And again, there's utilities and tools to help with this. You can run a program and get a lot of information about your computers that are out there, and then you can add to this other information that you know. And again, there's a number of utilities to help with this. What's in your network, what's connected up where, etc. When I'm dealing with documentation, there's labeling and naming conventions to use, and the book even give you an example of one to use. In a company, there might be a standard way I'm going to label things. Might go from like building to closet to device or port kind of thing. That way you can locate this wherever, and it needs to be a standard that's used, and things need to follow that. Tips for labeling: they say, if things don't actually fit on the label, then use the little diagram to explain it and hang that with that equipment so people understand how it's set up. Last little chunk of the chapter talks about some different documents that you might run into. Familiarity is the key. Just be familiar with these terms. As people mention them, you'll be like, okay, all right. Familiarity is the key. Initially, you're probably going to be on as the new person on the team, you're probably going to be the end of hearing these things, and eventually you're going to be in the position of maybe responding to or writing some of these. So again, to start with familiarity. RFP, request for proposal. This is something that goes out for a vendor or somebody else to do work. Maybe I want a new air conditioning system installed. I might do a request out for, hey, I would like people to do this. Memorandum of Understanding. This is going to document the intention of the two parties to enter in an agreement. Hey, it's going to take us time to actually draw it all up, but we're saying now we're going to do this. We're going to work on this thing together or do this thing together. That's your memorandum of understanding. Master service agreement, contract that defines terms of future contracts, how payment's going to get done, how we're going to arbitrate disagreements or arrangements, etc. So this kind of spells out this is how we're going to do these sorts of things down the road. Statement of work. A document details the work that must be completed for a particular project or for payment to occur. You know, I need these pieces of equipment installed, I need these pieces of equipment removed and recycled, etc., etc. Service level agreement. A good one, this one is the agreement you have with your ISP. What is the expected service and response time if there is an outage? So this is a contract between, you know, my company and my ISP, if you will, or a company and a vendor that's going to provide services to us. Master license agreement. If you have software, and this is where I pick on something like, you know, an AutoCAD or, you know, something very specific. There's a license agreement on how many running copies of that can I have. I might be able to install it on 10 machines, but I have 5 licenses, so at any given time, only 5 are allowed to be running that. That would be part of the license agreement. What are you allowed to have and what's allowed to run, etc. That would be specified in there, what you're allowed to run. Last little teeny chunk of the chapter is about changes. Changes need to be planned out, especially in a large facility. So they document a couple, or they talk about a couple changes you encounter. A patch. A patch would be updating a software, but a lot of us have encountered service packs and service patches in things. Upgrade might be a major upgrade to, this might be a service pack. This might be a service pack, a specific upgrade to an operating system. That could affect things. You know, patches a lot of times are usually minor. Upgrades are usually pretty significant. This might affect things. This is something that might need to be tested and planned for. Rollback might be when something didn't go well, I need to roll back. I come up with maybe a new driver on something. I install a new driver. It didn't quite work, so I roll back to the old one until I have time to figure out what's going on. General steps, and they spell these out for you. You know, don't allow patches to be automatically applied. Determine whether it's necessary. Research. Test it, maybe on a lab test equipment. You know, a test equipment that you have in a little testing lab. Determine it should be applied to everybody. When it's going to be applied. Is this something that overnight as people turn on, you know, turn the machines on, it'll be applied, or whether we're going to do it in groups or what? Notify people, back up your systems, prevent people from accessing while it's being updated, keep instructions handy, implement the change, test, re-enable access for people maybe to get to your server or whatever, inform people it's been completed, and record that. Record what got done. That's all in the name of changes. And this might actually be, you do some meetings and planning to plan this change that's going to affect maybe everybody in the company. And then reversing. Sometimes you might need to reverse back. What's your plan to reverse back if something does not go wrong? And there's even some suggestions here on what you would do. And last but not least, document. So document what got changed, how, etc. So there is Chapter 2.